board meeting of the Ojai Groundwater Management Agency on September 26th at 3 p.m. I call the roll.
Director Daddy?
Here.
Director Ayala? Here. Director Thilke? Here. And Chair Hages.
Here. Call Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, director's comments. Peter.
Nothing for today.
Bob.
Nothing here local.
Emily.
Nothing.
Okay, I don't have anything either. Very exciting times. Which is good. Which is good. Which is good.
What about that new well?
Yeah. Okay. General manager comments.
Good afternoon. It's been a while since we've seen each other, a couple months. I'll give you an update on a few things. I don't know if you subscribe to DWR or the groundwater emails from DWR. There was a grant application notice that came out that Jordan and Trevor from Dudek and I thought would be a good fit for OBGMA to enhance the state's stream gauge network. And you could apply to install a stream gauge, and they would look through their database and see if it made sense for them to have one there. So we went ahead and submitted that application, and this would be a stream gauge at the basin outfall, basically where Santa Ana Creek leaves the basin boundary. So we would have a good measurement of the outflow at that point. So we submitted the application online. They had some follow-up questions that I responded to, and I haven't heard back from them yet. So I'll give them another week or two and then follow up and see if we get a stream gauge. We did have to commit to ongoing maintenance after the grant period, which I think was 2007. So they would fund it up till that point, and then we'd be responsible for repairs and maintenance from that point on.
Yeah.
So I'll keep you posted. Ojai Days is coming up on October 19th. Casitas Water District is going to have a booth there. So I thought it might be a good idea. I could sort of kill a couple birds with one stone, and I could represent OBGMA there as well. And we have those brochures that we had printed out. I was notified that they don't like people handing out paper, so I might have to do something else, like a poster board or something, just to be on hand to answer questions about OBGMA.
Yeah, what's the cost? Because I'll be honest with you, I've done it several times.
We're not paying for it. I'm just inviting myself to Casitas's party and showing up with the flyers.
So you're not going to have a separate booth?
Not going to have a separate booth. I'm
Okay.
just going to be there with
Fine.
Casitas.
Because the one thing that I've found, they've improved it, but there's about 1 in 100 locals there.
Oh, gotcha. And then the percentage of those who have wells might be even smaller. So, yeah. But there might be realtors.
Uh-oh.
There might.
So, speaking of which, I had been scheduled to speak to the Ojai Valley Board of Realtors last week, and when I reached out to confirm, she said we needed to reschedule. So I'm going to follow up and still get a meeting with them at their office to talk about our OBGMA and what their responsibilities are.
Good.
Yesterday, DWR hosted a Sigma Turns 10 webinar,
Okay.
which was interesting. The
Could you say
surprise
that again? A what?
Sigma Sustainable Groundwater Management Act 10-year anniversary
10-year anniversary.
webinar.
Oh.
And the surprise guest of honor was former Governor Jerry Brown,
Wow.
who was responsible for implementing it 10 years ago. So that was kind of nostalgic to see him on the screen. They did, talk about how it came about and then what the, goals are looking forward. So as we know, the focus is on implementing. Most of the basins, I think they said 13 basins in the state don't have approved groundwater sustainability plans. So most of them do, and the next 10 years we'll be implementing them. When they asked about the challenges ahead, as you can imagine, the big one was funding for the implementation, especially on small basins who don't have the economy of scale and still need to spend the money. I try to be optimistic that funding will become available, but I'm also realistic about that as well. If we get a stream gauge, that'd be great. If we get more, we'll keep looking for opportunities. And then the Small GSA Coalition is going to have an in-person, well, I guess it's a hybrid meeting in early November in Santa Cruz. I'm just planning to participate remotely for that. And I think those are my updates. Everything else will be related to agenda items.
Okay, thank you, Julie. Next is the basin status report. Jordan?
All right, thank you very much. Let's get this moving here. There may be realtors. That was pretty clever. I'll have to think of that as a good title for some of these someday. But today we're going with On the Hydrologic Edge as we talk about the Ojai Basin conditions here in September 2024. Year-to-date rainfall totals, and we're pretty much near the end of the water year, which is October 1st through September 30th, so Monday will be official. And assuming we don't have any rain on the 4-day forecast, this is what we end up with for 2023 to 2024. Up on top of the ridge, we're at 48.35 inches, really no change through the summer effectively, and 28.86 inches on the valley floor. Obviously, that's greater than average on both cases, with about 21.25 being the average on the valley floor. What that has done to the basin water levels, we're, after 2 years of this, very high rainfall, we've got the double spike there at the end. Current, we're about 91.50 feet below ground surface at the key well, this Elrod well. Calculating to about 84% of basin capacity, or 67,200 acre feet. We're still a couple feet above where we were at the nadir of 2023 to 2024, way back in December 15th. So we still have a little bit of ways to go before reaching that. We probably will exceed it this year. The discussion in our office is, will we get to 100 feet at our nadir this year? And time will tell. That well, on a more stretched out hydrographic curve since October, so that this 1 year, we're almost back to where we started when we put this particular logger in after the nice hump of recharge in the spring and winter time of this water year. That subdued gradual curve at the top is likely associated with quite a bit of discharge occurring from the basin, and this main aquifer system being so saturated that it kind of goes around the edge of the perching layer, or the clay that is actually a sample of right in front of me. That's the darkest gray in the middle of this column. This is a representation of the cuttings from the depth discrete monitoring well. So I'll refer to that graphic, or that demonstrative, from time to time here, but you can imagine that it's that thick. This is about 330 feet from top to where the floor is, and it's that zone from about 150 feet up to about 33 feet between the yellow line and the purple line. That's the thickest package of the clays, which is thick in this part of the basin and thins out as we go upstream. So as you go up north and east in the basin, that thins out and eventually is absent, and that's where the recharge is occurring most significantly in the basin. And when water levels are so high, as they have been for much of 2022, 23, and 23, 24, that can actually go around the horn of that pinching layer. basin budget on inflow and outflow. Very little inflow these days. 0.05 CFS at Gridley. Thatcher, just under 0.2 of a CFS. Reeves Creek at the basin entry point, 0.08 CFS. Outflow, we've got 0.32 CFS out of the Montgomery Creek or the Fox, Barranca, or Stewart. Many names for many different creeks here, but that's the one that comes under the creek road. And the main channel was showing about 6.77 CFS. The inflow point at Senior Canyon at Ladera, the bridge, 0.88 CFS. And McNell was dry, Stewart was dry, and this is just as of yesterday. So the sum of surface water inflow was 1.2 CFS, and the outflow was about 7.1 CFS. So all of that 1.2 is fully infiltrating into the basin as these creeks all terminate their surface flow pretty quickly once they enter the basin, and that which is flowing out is of slightly different quality and of course quantity, coming from deeper storage further south and west within the basin, and largely from that southwest uppermost saturated zone. Here's this graph that shows all of this, and I was looking at this today and I thought, you know what, I think I want to stretch this out a little bit. I'd like to show really the correlation between where that perched system is, and that's these gravels that are just above that solid purple line and below the dashed purple line on this column, and how that correlates to the surface flow in CFS at San Antonio Creek now that we have over 3 years of data from that point. And the curve looks like this. Pretty darn similar. The magenta X's, or red X's as they might appear on the screen here, that's actually CFS discharge going from 0.01 CFS, and this is on the right y-axis, all the way up to 100 CFS. And these are actual, each X is an actual measurement that we've taken in San Antonio Creek at the outfall point, whereas Ms. Aranda mentioned earlier is the point where we've applied for the gauge to go. And so with funding from the DWR, we can potentially connect all those X's with actual data points that can be at the same scale as we do as we have for the loggers in the basin, including that in the perch system. That's the yellow line. That yellow line is a culmination of data points that are each taken 90 minutes apart, as opposed to every month apart like we have in the creek flow. And they're in elevation. So on the left y-axis, we go from about 724 feet elevation up to 741 feet, which is the top of the column here, and ground surface on South Fulton Street where this well is located. But I really like this because when you look at it at this stretched out scale, wow, what a great proxy we have for surface flow by measuring water levels in that perch system. The correlation is uncanny, not unexpected based on what we know about the basin, but it's an excellent barometer and a great way to check it because, as you know, San Antonio Creek, when it goes hard, and it'll take a lot of loggers with it, and has over the years. But if we're able to have a proxy like this, it's a good way to fill in some of those data gaps when those do occur. Graphically, let's take a tour around the basin. One of the things we've been thinking about is the importance of not just the moment that you're taking a photograph or a measurement, or the month you're taking a photograph or a measurement, but what happened the month before that and the month before that. Something called a 3-month trailing average. So I decided to show some of these in sort of a time lapse of 3 months. So you've got June, July, today, and this image. This is where Reeves Creek enters the basin, and you can just see it effectively getting drier and drier throughout the summer, and of course the plants getting bigger and bigger. We'll do this again over at Thatcher Creek, where it goes underneath McAndrew, rushing back in June, really drying up, and quite a bit of algae come July, and then recently still a little bit of water coming in, a lot less algae, but still flowing a little bit. This is the measurement point where Senior Canyon goes underneath the bridge at Ladera, and one of the places we monitor this, again, 3 months ago, 2, and yesterday. Here's the Ladera Dry Creek crossing. So again, 3 months, 2, drying up, and today. Now, this one doesn't have a 3-month average because this is just downstream, but just at the area of the spreading grounds at San Antonio Creek, we have complete infiltration of that surface water. Creek's dry. But it pops up again over the perch system where you have quite a bit of the phreatic vegetation that's grown up dependent upon those, that perch system water. And we measure this with GPS every month to contribute to those graphics and charts we showed earlier. Under Montgomery Creek or under Creek Road at Montgomery or Stewart or Fox, or call it what you will, at this point we've got quite a bit of flow all the way through back in June, but channelized in that one notch by July, and then more recently. Here's our main outflow point for about where the gauge would go, or at least series of gauges, if we are successful in obtaining that grant from the DWR. This is where we measure the flows that we've been reporting. You can see 3 months ago quite a bit more flow, and slowly just declining as that perch system discharges its volumes to the surface water. What do we got coming up? We mentioned El Nino, La Nina, and La Nada. Right now we're looking at a La Nina watch officially, and it puts us right on the edge of equal chances of precipitation to below average precipitation, which I've always associated with a La Nina. But it also is looking warmer in the 3-month outlook for October, November, and December 2024. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jordan. Anyone have any questions?
Yeah, I have a question. On the last one where you want to put that last gauge, where is that physically located? Where would if I were looking at a map, where would I say, I don't want to go there, but where is that?
I think you do want to go there, Bob.
No, I don't think so. Going
Not
to
there.
the pool where the bicycle bridge is with an electric bike is good enough for me,
Okay.
you know.
So what we've done in all of these graphics is actually put in that lower right-hand corner an inset map of the basin outlined in purple. And that little yellow camera icon is about where these photographs are taken. So it's the furthest south point of the alluvial portion of the Ojai Basin.
And where would that be?
So if you leave here and you go out and you turn left or go down Montgomery, you find your way down to Creek Road. And just as you start going down the curve, at Skunk Ranch Road goes
Right.
due south,
Right.
and you start going west and southwest on Creek Road, that's about where you start crossing the Santa Ana Oroa Pre-Default and exiting the Ojai Basin. And just to the left of that, right about where there's a large oak tree with sort of a dirt roundabout where you can park, and it gets kind of muddy when it rains. You just traverse through some poison oak, avoid the rattlesnakes, some minor homeless encampments, and that's where you'll find us.
And so we're getting close to the Arundo Forest down there.
We're almost to the Arundo Forest, yeah. That is in various stages of removal and management.
A wild question. My understanding is that, forget Cañada Largo and everything outside of Casita Springs, the furthest north of any of the outflows are just before you hit the Arnez grade. We have the one bridge there, and that's the last tributary coming out of the Ojai Valley, correct?
That's the point at which San Antonio Creek enters the Ventura
Main
River
channel,
system.
and we got the big pool there.
Yeah, exactly.
Is there any measuring that's done just below that that annually tells us how many acre feet of water flow through that main tributary below the San Antonio? Does anybody track that? Do we get 150,000 acre feet in one year and 30,000 acre feet in another year? Because those got to be some pretty big numbers at times. And I'm just wondering if that gets tracked.
There are different agencies, the county, USGS, and City of Ventura, I think, all kind of coordinate, and Casitas coordinate monitoring some stream flows down there. In Casitas's hydrology report, the annual hydrology report, we have data about that. I don't know it off the top of my head, but I can get it if you're interested in it.
I'd just like to see how that thing tracks.
There's also data on the Upper Ventura Groundwater Management Agency's website on that. But there is the data coming, where the confluence is. We need some better information there,
Yeah, I think those
what
are,
comes
the
out of
ones I'm
this
talking about are
basin.
more Foster Park.
Hey,
Yeah, so-
all of it comes out of the valley. When you get down to Kenyatta, that's different. That comes from Upper Ojai and it goes around everybody, right?
Well, that comes down Lion Creek into.
Right, Lion
Yeah.
Creek, but that's south of Casitas Vista. I guess that would
Yeah.
count too. So I don't know. What do? You put a gauge in down at Foster Park so you can grab the entire valley.
Well, pretty much the Highway 33 bridge across San Antonio Creek, that's pretty much where San Antonio enters the Ventura River.
Right.
And there's gauges there.
Oh, okay.
There have been historically gauges there, and I think the most active one is on Old Creek Road Bridge that goes where that's the last point where San Antonio Creek flows over bedrock or a very thin amount of alluvium before entering a larger pool of alluvium where Tres Condadas is and the Girl Scout camp. And then, of course, it flows further west underneath the 33 bridge, which has historical gauges but has been changed from time to time. But then once you get to the confluence, there's really only groundwater monitoring wells that are monitored at high frequency within the Ventura River alluvium proper, and occasional spot checking of surface flows before you get to that Casitas Vista Bridge, which has the longest gauge record around that gives us a good.
I mean, I go to one of the sites and I can look at the CFFs and I can see what the flow is, but it doesn't give me a cumulative year-to-date kind of flow. I'm not able to find that on a map that gives me year-to-date. I just am kind of wondering, because
I don't know that anybody calculates that. It'd be hard to
Well,
do.
I'm pretty sure that's going to come up in the adjudication one of these days down the road.
Well, because the geometry changes so much that it's three-dimensional. Volume is three-dimensional, so you've got a big changing river all the way upstream. That would be a Herculean task.
Thank you.
Jordan, do you know what the outflow you showed was 7.2 CFS?
Through San Antonio Creek at the boundary of the basin.
Do you have any idea what it is at the confluence during the same time period?
You can check that out right now. I'll do that and get back to
Okay,
that question
sure.
momentarily.
Any other questions or comments? Any public questions or comments regarding Jordan's presentation? Okay, next item is public comments. So this is a time for the public to comment on items not on today's agenda. Is there any public comments? Okay. Consent agenda. We have the financial report for July and August and the minutes for the July 25th board meeting. Questions or comments? If not, do I have a motion to approve?
I make a motion to approve.
Second?
Call the roll.
Director Daddy?
Yes.
Director Ayala?
I'll abstain because I wasn't at the July meeting.
Director Thilke?
Yes.
Chair Hages?
Yes. Okay, item 8 is well verification for 300 Longhorn Lane. Julia?
Yes, so this application was submitted in August, and we had the resolution in place based on Governor Newsom's executive orders for that process to go through. And this was the first test case for it. So they submitted their deposit, they submitted all their paperwork, they submitted a report from Cure Groundwater, and then we in turn took that to DUDEC, who's our groundwater sustainability plan consultant, to make sure that it met the criteria, the first two criteria that are in the recommendation of the memo, which are basically to determine that the groundwater extraction by the proposed well would not be inconsistent with our groundwater sustainability plan. They're proposing to extract 3 acre-feet a year. And then the second one is to determine that that groundwater extraction would not decrease the likelihood of achieving any sustainability goal as covered in our plan. As a background, this property was sharing a well with the next door neighbor, and then the next door neighbor, they didn't have anything in writing, so the next door neighbor decided that they didn't want to do it anymore. So this applicant has to drill their own well now. So I think the net is negligible on the basin, because it's just transferring basically the demand from one property to another. So there is a resolution number 2024-03 to authorize the written verification of their proposed new well at 300 Longhorn Lane.
Okay, questions or comments? Any questions or comments from the public? I have a motion to adopt resolution 2024-3.
I so move.
I second.
Call the roll.
Director Daddy,
Yes.
Director Ayala,
Yes.
Director Thielke,
Yes.
Chair Hages.
Yes. Okay, item 8B is financial statements for fiscal year 2021, 21-22, 22-23, and 23-24.
Yes, we are taking care of 4 years of financial statements, AKA audits. Jennifer Wessel is online on the Zoom call from the accounting firm that put these together. The drafts are there. That's why our agenda was such a hefty package this time. I do have minor comments that I've shared with Jennifer already, but otherwise I think they're good to go, and we can wrap them up. I think she got the final bit of information she needed from our legal counsel. So happy to forward any questions to Jennifer.
Is there a management letter on any of the years?
A management rep letter?
Yes.
Yes, that will, as soon as you guys are fine with the financial statements, we'll issue the management rep letter.
Okay.
Because they'll have the management rep letter, the audit report, and the financial statements have to be dated the same date.
All right.
It's a timing issue.
The gist of it is that they didn't find any problems.
Yeah. Any questions or comments?
This is Emily. It looked fine to me. On one page, I can't remember where it was, you listed the directors and you didn't list the alternates, and I don't know if that's necessary or not, but
Yeah, we probably
it
should.
wasn't on there. And I can't remember which page it was listed on, one of the first pages.
Yeah, I think they're on page 4
Yeah,
of
page
each
4.
one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, if
Yeah,
you
and
want to email me that information, I'd be happy to add that.
Okay.
Yeah, part of it too is that these are so many years, we've had changes, so some of the board members are different. We'll have to go back and figure out who the alternates were.
Yeah.
I'll have to ask you guys for your help in
Okay,
figuring that out.
I think I know who they are.
Okay.
To my knowledge, nobody's died.
No. We've had people abandon ship though.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments? All right, thank you. This has been a nuisance for a long time, trying to get this thing
We're
done.
all caught up now.
Yes, thank you.
Excuse me, there's one late question. Is there anybody we need to submit this to? State Water, any oversight that, we need to show sustainability of financial, they want a sustainability of everything else, so. I just
For
wondered.
transparency purposes, when we get the finals, I will post them on our website.
We don't have to submit it to the state controller or anything. I mean,
We submit
Casitas
We
does.
submit
Right.
separate statements to the state controller.
Okay,
I think you just have to have audited financial statements available for the state controller's office and the county if they request it.
Yeah.
But I think as long as you have it on your website, that's probably
Okay.
sufficient. But don't quote me on that. I don't think you have to submit them to the county or the SCO.
And then if, sometimes if, I know Casitas has to go through this, if we have a grant or something, they
Yes.
want to know, they want to make sure we have these.
and LAFCO would like to know we did it too.
LAFCO as well, yes.
Mhm.
All right, any other questions? We're talking about the 4 years of audit reports, or 6 years. You have any questions, Andy? This is a draft, so. For the record, Director Andy Whitman is present. Was there an action we need to take?
To review and approve them with some minor edits.
All right,
I just sent you, Julie, right before the meeting. We edited updated the financial statements with the litigation information. That's the only change we made a few minor tweaks, but not anything relevant, really, just like TBD on the date, so you know that will change.
okay. So could I have a motion to accept the drafts?
I would move to approve the drafts, accept the drafts.
All right,
A second.
call the roll?
Director Daddy,
Yes.
Director Ayala,
Yes.
Director Thilke,
Yes.
Director Whitman,
Yes.
Chair Hages.
Yes. Okay, the next item is establishing an updated process and criteria for administering water well registration and verification requests.
Yes, so all the work that we did to put this well verification process together to comply with the executive orders last year got repealed. The governor issued executive order EON-4-24 that repealed paragraph 4 of the previous one, which is what our process had been based on and made a lot of reference to. We still think that it's a valid process for confirming and verifying that any new wells would not be inconsistent with the groundwater sustainability plan, and that there's a need still for our GSP consultant to review the applications and provide that assurance to the board. In fact, CC handed me an application today for a well that's proposing to pull 100 acre-feet a year. So I think it's still a very valid process to go through, but we've eliminated the references to the executive orders and instead relied on Water Code and Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. Peter obviously helped put all those together. So I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Peter?
Not really, Julia. I think that was a good summary. With the governor rescinding the executive order requirements, we had to relook at this. And again, as Julia mentioned, this is still a valuable process that the agency, I think, should be going through each time it looks at a new well application. We still got the obligation under SGMA to ensure that the groundwater of the basin is sustainably managed. We're authorized to take whatever acts necessary in that regard to make sure that that's the case. And that's the authority by which this new updated revised process would be authorized.
Okay, any questions or comments?
Certainly. What was the reasoning behind that, Peter? Why would the governor weigh in on and strike that? What was his intent in doing that?
Well, I mean, that's a good question, and I don't know precisely, but I could venture a guess that the drought is over, right?
Yes.
We're going into a new hydrologic cycle.
No.
And these were emergency orders that the governor issued in the midst of a drought. And I guess I'm assuming he probably gets pressure from folks, saying, do we need these executive orders in place indefinitely when we're not facing drought conditions anymore in the state of California? And so, given the circumstances which the executive orders were issued under, I think he probably determined that it was appropriate to rescind them, but it doesn't mean that it's not an otherwise valid and appropriate process for individual groundwater sustainability agencies to go through when they're looking at new well requests.
Got it.
Any questions or comments? Any questions or comments from the public?
Tom Hicks here. Can I make a quick observation on that last bit about the governor's declaration?
Sure, go ahead.
Just as a point of statewide FYI, it's only through those governor's drought declarations that a whole suite of state water board curtailment authorities are activated. So if you were to think about the activation of that governor's order, it's either being green, yellow, or red. It means that the risk of any form of state water board activity, and again, I don't want to get ahead of myself in the Ventura watershed, but it dramatically downsizes the immediate risk of any kind of state intervention or curtailment action.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Not, can I have a motion to adopt Resolution 2024-4?
Make a motion to adopt.
A second?
Call the roll?
Director Daddy?
Yes.
Director Ayala?
Yes.
Director Thilke?
Yes.
Director Whitman?
Yes.
Chair Hages?
Yes. Okay, item 8D is authorize access database consulting services.
Yes, our access database is kind of the heart of our operation when we're tracking groundwater extractions and sending out statements. It's, as I've mentioned a few times, we've gone through and updated, so we have the most recent version of Access. We got some help from an Access database consultant to make some tweaks to make it more user-friendly. We couldn't actually see the data, like as an Excel spreadsheet, that kind of format. It was all kind of hidden, and all we had was this front-facing user interface. So we did a little test with this one consultant to see, if they were responsive and if they could listen to our directions and do the things we wanted, and we had a great experience with them. So I did that with my $2,500 limit to get 10 hours of work out of them, and they did a whole laundry list of things for us. So I would like to expand on that and make it not only more user-friendly, but make some tweaks to the database itself. One of the things we haven't been able to capture is whether a well is within OBGMA and not within the DWR defined basin. There's this edge around the boundary, and those who are not within the DWR defined basin are not subject to the groundwater sustainability plan fees, and we have no way of extracting that now. So that's one important enhancement that I'd like to make. We also, when we're sending delinquent statements out right now, it takes the fee that's in effect now rather than the fee that was in effect at the time of their delinquency. And so we need a better way to manage that so that it's doing all the math for us and pulling the right fee from the right time period. So those are a few things. I know I'm getting into the weeds here on the database, but it would really make our lives easier when we're managing it and sending out statements and dealing with our constituents. So I would like to get $5,000 limit for them to do some more enhancements for now.
Yeah, if this thing I mean, if it's user-friendly, it produces really great reports, so we could get a lot more information
Yep.
very quickly. The data's there, it's just
It's
like
there.
Julia said, you can't see it. Any questions, comments? Can I have a motion to approve?
I so move.
A second?
I'll second.
Call the roll?
Director Daddy,
Yes.
Director Ayala,
Yes.
Director Thilke,
Yes.
Director Whitman,
Yes.
Chair Hages.
Yes. Okay, the item 8E is reschedule board meeting of October 31st, Halloween.
That's just a personal request from me.
Have any problems with that?
No problem.
All right. Have a motion?
It's a good change.
Yeah. Have a motion to change the board date to the 24th?
I move we change the date to the 24th of October.
Second?
I'll second.
Call the roll?
Director Daddy,
Yes.
Director Ayala,
Yes.
Director Thilke,
Yes.
Director Whitman,
Yes.
Chair Hages.
Yes. Okay, discussion items. We have the draft budget for fiscal year 24-25. It's on the last page.
Yes, so you can see, I gave some actual numbers there as of the end of August, where we're at on our income and expenses, and then projected out to where we'll be at the end of the fiscal year in another few days. What our budget was for last year, and then where we ended up at estimated actual versus the budget. So for the fiscal year that's going to be ending soon, we're going to be, good $70,000 in the black. And I think that's mostly due to the increase that you approved for the GSP fee going from 37 per acre foot to 75 per acre foot. So what I proposed for fiscal year 24-25 takes into account the fee going up to $100 per acre foot for the GSP fee, and it's based on extractions of 3,000 acre feet. We were about, actually it's in the financial report. Let me go back and find it. Where we were on extractions. Oh, doesn't look like I added that. I think we were around 2,100 at the end of March. No. End of June. So we have July, August, September. So end of June, we were about 2,100. So I'm expecting we'll be close to 3,000 by the end of this fiscal year, and I just assumed we would do the same next year. If it's dry, we might do more. But that's what the numbers are based on. 3,000 acre feet a year at $100 per acre foot for the extraction fees. The extraction charges are $25 per acre foot, so that's where the 75,000 comes from. The wellhead fee is $260 per year per well. We get some for recordation and some late fees. I'm also going to work with our bookkeeper to reclassify some of the things. I really want to pull out maybe some more on the expense side. You'll know, for example, if somebody's funding their well application, that's not going to show up in here because that $5,000 gets accounted for separately. And then the attorney fees, my time, CC's time, that all gets managed separately. The expenses include a 5% payroll increase for our admin staff. It also takes into account the contractual increase with Casitas for my services. Professional fees, the GSP, I think I mentioned in the cover memo, what we're planning on working on for a GSP implementation is the groundwater dependent ecosystems assessment, start on the development of a comprehensive constructive use plan, and the data management system. And the access database will go a long way with that data management system as well. Those I see are the significant expenses for next year. So I'm happy to take any comments or feedback, and my plan was to bring the final budget to the October board meeting for adoption.
Questions? When is the 5-year report due? Is that,
Well, let's see. It was approved in October of 2023, so I think next fiscal year we won't have to start on it, but the following fiscal year we'll have to start on it so that it's ready when it's due.
that's the big ticket item.
That will be the big ticket
It's
item.
gonna save the basin.
And that's what having the revenue and on hold
Yes.
for those upcoming expenses is important.
Okay. All right, any questions or comments? We'll bring the final budget back next month.
Yeah, I have a comment. Do we send a newsletter to those pumpers that we have and say, here's where we are, here's what we've done, here's the budget, and we got a great big giant $300 plus $400,000 report coming up in 2 years. And so this is why these fees have had to go up. Do we make it transparent that, we're not reserving money, we're not stacking money, we're not buying new trucks, we're not doing a bunch of stuff. We're just trying to get solvent so we can satisfy the state on reports.
I don't have any specific outreach materials prepared like that, but that's something I can work on.
Anybody think it would be important to let all of the people know why
I
we've
agree with you.
increased the rate so much, and let them know what the expenses are and what we're facing? It's not like our salary has gone up, right?
Oh, that's a
What
good idea.
salary?
Yeah,
Well, we can put that in there too.
yeah.
Got a
Yeah.
1,000% raise from
You're
0
not
to
making
0.
what I'm making, Emily?
Some of us got, yeah, exactly. Yeah, UVRGA has sent out some newsletters with the billing and just tried to keep it transparent, and also with we have an email list. It might be good to get people on in the email list so they maybe can come to the meetings if they have something to say. I know the last invoicing did cause a lot of kerfuffle amongst neighbors. But we could also point out where we stand in regards to what other basins are charging. The UVRGA is at $166 an acre foot for 24-25. So this basin's still below that, but that basin pumps less. And then the other question that is going around the farmers of the East End is, what about these people that are lying about how much they pump? Do we have a way of knowing, I don't know what the truth is and who's saying they pump what, but we should be monitoring.
Well, everyone's supposed to have a meter.
Yeah.
That's something that the meter compliance committee has talked about. Not everybody does, and some people
Yeah.
just keep writing 0.5 acre feet, 0.5 acre feet every statement.
Yeah, at some point, we'll need to go out and check that, and other groundwater basins have you take a photo of
Yep.
it every quarter and send it in. It's hard to lie consistently with photos.
Yeah, we're
Unless,
getting there.
unless like a number of ours, they don't have them.
Yeah.
There is another
They break,
basin
too.
that is doing it different. What they're doing is they're taking a look at the acreage, and they're just applying usage based on planted acreage and say, you use 75 acre feet based on this much acreage, and they're just billing them for it because they're not reporting. They don't have a meter. And I'm hoping that one day we'll be able to get to that and then just send them a bill and just says, based on your planting, for lack of compliance and reporting, you owe this much money.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
Right.
And if they, make it pretty stiff, and that way if they want to report their actual, it's less.
We need to incentivize them to spend the money to get a meter
Yeah.
and report.
Yeah.
And I think by giving them a reasonable, not nuts, but a reasonable basis, and there are basins that are doing that, water agencies doing that by planting. If you have this much, this crop, and you have this many acres, it's gonna take this amount of water. And Cal Davis and a number of places have been doing that for years.
Yeah, it can be
You just
done.
look it up on
Carpenter-
Google.
Well, Carpinteria Valley Water District does that. Their advantage they have is that they're the water district and the GSA, So they also have access to people's water usage through their meters, through the pipes from CARP. And then it's a GIS exercise, and they have a consultant who helps them do that every year. And then there's a process where people can say, no, that's not right. Look, here's my water bill or something. And there's some back and forth with each one. And then once they get to an agreement, it goes on their property tax bill.
How much trouble would it be in cost to just take the 5 biggest areas that are fully planted that haven't reported at all and are totally uncooperative, to come in and run a matrix and come up with an estimated water use and develop a bill on that and send it?
I have not had much success with sending people their delinquency letters and getting them to respond. We have sent certified, we're kind of going now into the meter compliance ad hoc committee part. They will not pick up their mail. We send certified letters and they won't pick it up. They don't return phone calls. They basically don't feel like they should have to pay anything. That I don't think it's the issue is that they don't have time to go read their meter or anything. It's more like they just fundamentally disagree with having to pay. But we can look at acreage. We can, I have access to GIS at Casitas, and as well as the county's, GIS website. That's easy to do.
Yeah, I think if I could interrupt, I think what Director Daddy's suggesting is that, with respect to these folks, we switched from a self-reporting type of an approach to this is what you owe, and you've got an opportunity, as you say, Julia, process to come in and dispute it, negotiate it. But otherwise, that's going to be final, and then it's going on your tax bill. And it may be a more direct way to deal with these people than waiting for them to report accurately and whatnot. It's something interesting to think about. It will require retention of an expert to work with the GIS mapping and somebody who's an expert in crop duties and that sort of thing. But once you get the right person on board, I don't think it's a difficult exercise for them to take a piece of property and estimate what somebody's water use is.
Thank you. And again, what I want to reiterate is our general manager is not supposed to be a bill collector. And when we have people that are just totally, I don't know if the word combative is correct, but totally to a point where they're just going to ignore their responsibility in the position, then I think we need to take the action, put a lien, give it to the county, and that'll do a couple of things. That will stop people from selling property and thinking they can bug out and avoid the money that they owe us, 'cause that'll end that. And after we do 2 or 3 of these, I'm hoping, because I know the people up there are incredibly brilliant, I'm hoping that are 2 or 3 of these as examples that it'll end this trend. And we'll get compliance.
A little bit of a story from Senior Canyon, and there was a president of Senior Canyon about 25 years ago who had 2 acres in commercial cultivation, and that was the amount of land you needed to qualify for an ag meter, and that was in agreement with Casitas. So this gentleman, who was president of Senior Canyon, Casitas was doing aerial surveys back then, and they looked at, they let the company know that this gentleman had an oak tree in the middle of that orchard that he didn't want to take out. It was a prized oak tree, which reduced the 2 acres to about 1.97 acres, and he was denied the ag rate. So there's been a precedent for this, and Casitas used to do it regularly because they would not give, anybody the discounted rate for ag unless they met that 2-acre minimum.
You mean they actually stuck by their rules?
Yes.
That's totally something I
How
would do.
novel.
Well, it's also because the Bureau, because Casitas was formed in the Bureau as an ag,
Yeah.
supplemental water. That was a requirement of the Bureau. And every ag user who gets that rate in Casitas' service area has to submit an annual crop report showing, tickets that it's commercial production,
Yeah.
at least 2 acres.
Well, I think we have two problems. One, we have people that won't meter and at the same time don't report. But then we have people who meter and we know they meter, but they just won't pay us.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think figuring this out so we can bill on a tax roll, it would make everyone's life much easier. We would have a secure revenue. You can't sell your property and skip out, because whoever buys it's gonna get the tax bill. And you can't pay just part of your tax bill, you have to pay the whole thing. So, and Julia and Peter have been working with the county, so I think we maybe be able to do that. But we have to have a way to come up with a number that we're gonna bill them, so.
Yeah.
I think your idea is a good one.
Well, and I think what's best, while I don't want our general manager to be the bill collector,
No.
I don't want to be the person that puts the pain and penalizes them for being delinquent in paying their taxes and partially paying. That would be the county's obligation, and they can take care of
Yeah.
that portion. So if they're not going to pay,
Yeah.
then they're not going to pay their property taxes. We'll let the county handle that. Eventually, it'll come up for auction in a few years.
Well, I'm sure they'll pay it. It's probably a very small part of their bill. But the other thing is we can't ignore the metering, because the metering is an important part of our data collection. So a crop estimate would help, but having the actual pumpage, I think long-term is what we really want.
So I did get in touch with the county auditor controller's office. They're the ones who manage that process of getting liens, if you will, onto property taxes. And I have a stack of forms and papers and process to wrap my head around, to figure out what it is we would need to submit to them and what the timing is and what board actions would need to be done. So I'm going to spend the next few weeks working through that. I also have a contact there who can help. What I want to do, I like flow charts and checklists, so that's what I'm going to try to develop for myself. Also, one of the other options that I thought out of and I discussed this with Peter a little bit, was taking them to small claims court, because I know that some water agencies do that just with people who are behind on paying their water bills. When I got that paperwork, it said that if you lose in small claims court, you can't appeal. So that worried me a little bit. But then Casitas just recently had a case where they were sued in small claims court and were able to appeal it to Superior Court and won. So I'm just throwing this at Peter right now because it just happened today. So.
The only thing with that is you can get a decision in your favor, but you still got to collect the money.
Yes.
So that's another process.
It's still another
That's where we
process.
send you out with a gun and you have to go to the.
No.
I wouldn't be good at that.
I would.
I think I think the tax roll is the best, because
Okay.
basically it's a once a year process. You collect all the information, you put together the submittal to the county. You have a hearing. People have a chance to protest or come in with other information. Board approves it and it goes to the county, and that's it. I've done it with sewer rates, and it's really simple compared to trying to collect bills every quarter.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, with the Upper Ventura groundwater basin, we were trying to get everyone, there's about 20 wells that were not registering, and maybe some of them weren't even being used, but same issue where we sent out letters and people didn't collect them. And then Brian Bondi had the grand idea of sending a package by FedEx, which
That was going to be my next
they all
step.
accepted, and so we know they got the letter. And on several of the people, we have put daily penalties of $10 a day, which adds up, and half the people within the month, had registered their wells, and it was quite a useful and less expensive than dealing with going to court or small claims court. And on the Upper Ventura as well, the people have to prove that the meter is calibrated as well, and I don't know when OBGMA last did that. You certainly haven't asked us. I know one of our meters wasn't working for a little bit, and we,
It is in our ordinance that they're supposed to be calibrated.
So perhaps we need to send out the ordinance again to everybody. You don't want to send 3 people one thing and ignore the rest of the people. Let's do a newsletter to all well owners and include the ordinance and say, this is what you're supposed to be doing. Yes, we fell behind, but these are the rules, and there will be penalties and possible, whatever we decide, court dates for people that aren't complying. And maybe people will wake up. Cece's over there laughing because she knows some of these people. But I think it's important to be strict and fair with everybody equally, and not call out 3 people. Let's treat everybody the same, whether they're small or big.
And then we can continue to track that data within the database, like get their calibration reports, make a record of it, know when it's due again for calibration. We can certainly keep track of all that.
Yeah.
Well, I think the next step is we're going to have to come up with an ordinance that specifies what the fines are for violations of various ordinances. And if we're able to put at least those fines on the tax roll, we'll have the ability to fine them and the ability to collect the fines. Okay, anything else on that? That actually was item 9C, we'll call that.
Yeah, I just have a question. It's noticeable from the budget that we've got a blank line for grant income and a blank line for grant expense. I know that's actually, better than having grant expense and no grant income. But I know that grant money is something you have to look for in order to find it. Do we have any staff that's like actively searching for grant money, or have we done that in the past?
Yeah, I gave an update at the top of the meeting.
Okay, good.
So we applied for a grant to put a stream gauge in San Antonio Creek where it leaves the basin boundary. So there's nothing in there because I don't know what our chances are of getting it. So, but yeah, I get the emails all the time at my other job also. So when that one popped up, it was kind of a no-brainer to apply for it.
Okay. I know that there's, people who do that, for a living, just, looking for and writing grant applications. I don't know if that's something that would be, fruitful in this arena, but.
I think the Small GSA Coalition is a good source of information and networking for that, because we're all small GSAs.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you remember, we had tried to put some language in the climate bond that's coming up on the ballot, specifically for small GSAs to get have priority. That it didn't make it in, but I think that group is a good source of information. And I do have experience applying for grants. I think 60% of my job at Casitas right now is finding money, looking for.
I have a question. Is it possible to get, this is in regards to new owners of wells, because that's when a lot of property was bought and sold during my leave of absence. But I'm wondering if it could be on the seller's package or the buyer's package for the real estate. I know there are for septic tanks and also for the sewer laterals, which all the realtors do. Everybody, I can't think of the word I want to say, but
Discloses.
Comply.
yes, they comply.
Yes.
And there is something on the I guess it's the, I've never bought a house. So it's on the,
Disclosures.
thank you.
Yes.
It's on the disclosures.
Yes.
And there is something about wells, but I think that, and I once called the California State Real Estate Office, and it would be, to me, something that would be wonderful to have on there, and to have our name in there, and we could be, first in line to finding these people.
I spoke to the interim general manager at Ojai Valley Sand District. He sent me over the, I believe it was a resolution or an ordinance or both that they passed to get that process going. And he did say that they met with the Ojai Valley Board of Realtors to give them all of that information and make sure that they're all aware of it. That was the avenue that they used to get it in that, escrow process, was making the realtors in the valley aware of it. So I just got that from him today, so I'm gonna absorb that and maybe come back. I'll forward it to Peter as well. Hopefully bring something back next meeting. It might not be till November because I know Peter's gonna be out for a couple weeks. So we're working on that too.
Oh, that sounds
Julia,
great.
I'd make a suggestion. I pushed that thing through. I went and cut the board to do it. And it was a different thing with sewer because the banks and the home inspection, nobody inspects the lateral. Then their toilet overflows and they got an insurance claim. And then you find out that they had 7 of these and they never disclosed. So that was for a whole different reason. But the process is something that we could use in what it was and what it says. If you haven't had your sewer lateral cameraed in 10 years, you have to have it lateraled upon transfer. Ours is going to have to be significantly different than that because it's just going to be one of the things where at transfer of property. Is that what you're looking for, Cece?
Well, but it also has, realtors do call someone to come and look at the well. But we don't get any information. We don't know who's looking at the well, and they don't know about us. I tried many years ago and talked to the realtors, and Julia's doing the same right now.
Oh, and Pete Kaiser was the one that helped me get that through. So you have access to Pete, and he knows it well. And so, we could do something like that. And what it was just on every transfer of property, they had to comply. And that is limited only to within the city of Ojai on that sewer.
Sure,
Okay? So,
I understand, but I do work for someone who does septic tanks, and those are, we do so many inspections of septic tanks, and that's out of the city.
right.
To me, it seems like this is a state of California issue. I mean, we're all
Right.
supposed to comply with SGMA. It should be on all real estate. I mean, any agricultural piece of property,
Right?
the well is the
Exactly.
first thing you look at, and of course you have to
Yeah.
disclose if you have to pay fees to,
So we need legislation.
well, it should just,
Well, I
I
think
mean,
we could do
I
that.
know
Yeah.
people don't like dealing with the Board of Realtors, but the state really ought to make it
I agree.
a mandatory disclosure for any property that has a well in the state. So, and I've stated that at other venues, but it just seems crazy to me that.
Well, now's the time to get to Lamone and Bennett because everything's ended, and so now they're going to start coming up with all their favorite legislation for next year.
Yeah.
And we should get in line and ask them first to sponsor.
Yeah, I mean, we could require an inspection, a verification that there's a meter and a meter calibration.
Right. I like that idea of the meter.
And our own inspector.
Yeah.
Well, I know, There's a list somewhere of people that calibrate well meters. I think Fox Canyon, some of the big guys use the same list. Yeah, you can't just have some random person go say, yeah, it's good. It needs to be measured and calibrated.
Yeah, part of our GSP implementation scope was to do that on behalf of the OBGMA. So we have a fleet of ultrasonic flow meters that we can clamp on to the pipes and then check that versus what the customer's meter reads, similar to how Edison tests are done.
Yep.
And that way we can sort of get a soft calibration. The question is, how many do we do and when, and what's the priority, and of course the budget. So while we put forth that proposed task, I think in December or January of this year, it was approved, but then we kind of held back until the budgets were better balanced, I think. So it's on the table. I think it's in the works when we want to pull that trigger.
Okay.
And then I think just coming back to the CFS question that was raised earlier, if I can speak to that for this moment. Just doing some quick research here. As I mentioned, we measured about 7.1 CFS leaving the Ojai Basin as surface flow at the basin boundary. We have pretty good confidence in that number. There are 4 other numbers I will give you, all of which are preliminary, and the one of which I have the most confidence is the USGS gauge at Casitas Vista, which at the same time that we were recording the 7.1 CFS, registered 16 CFS in the Ventura River proper. Now, going back upstream toward San Antonio Creek, and at that Casitas Vista, the county is the only one that reports those gauges in semi-real time. At the same location that the USGS reports 16 CFS, at the same time the county reports 11 CFS. So be careful who you're listening to, who you have most faith in, and all of that. But then the only other 2 gauges between there are at Old Creek Road Bridge, which was measuring 3 CFS per the county, and maybe 11/16 accurate or thereabouts, and 4 CFS at Camp Comfort. Now, it stands to reason that along the San Antonio Creek corridor between the Ojai Basin and the Ventura River Basin, there's a lot of phreatic uptake, and folks have wells that extract from that little system. So those are the numbers as we see them, and I think we'll try to report that kind of thing monthly. Thank you.
Thank you, Jordan. Okay, any legislative ad hoc committee updates? Okay, and I think we beat the meter thing to death already, so if there's nothing else, we are adjourned.
Thank you for bringing up